the brand wasn't growing. We got stuck on growth and I was like, why isn't it growing? And I really wanted it to grow. Like it wasn't just like, I'm happy being there. You want to keep getting 1% better. And then I had to look at myself. It was me. Like I was making all the mistakes. I wasn't listening. I wasn't learning.
This is Alex Cleanthus, and today we're talking with Jason Daniel, the founder and CEO of LSKD, about how they went from zero up to $80 million in revenue in 5 years in the apparel industry. Hello and welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
great to meet you.
Yeah, same. And we're both in Queensland, so that's really, really cool. But for those people who don't know, could you explain what LSKD does?
Yeah, sure. So, LSKD is a functional sportswear brand with a street aesthetic. And our mission is to inspire people to chase the vibe through sports, fitness, and adventure. And we're very passionate about, our 6 core values and, and everything we do revolves back to our mission and values. It's a massive passion of ours and really trying to create the best sportswear in the year, best sportswear in the world for our athletes and community athletes. There's a bigger backstory to it, but that's the breadth of it.
Yeah. So where did you get the idea from?
So I'll go back to 2002. So I was in high school. I was about 13 years old, and the brand actually started out as a high school nickname. And I grew up riding BMX, and I was actually lucky enough to be riding with some professional athletes that were 18 in Logan. And one of them went off to win X Games a couple of times. And I was actually on the Gold Coast, and I couldn't make this jump. And because I was the kid, they called me the loose kid, because I couldn't make this jump. And that's how it all started. And it was just a phrase that we used growing up with loose kid. And it was a bunch of fun. And from about 2002 to 2007, we had a couple of T-shirts. We got it, my mum actually helped me back then get the trademark papers, and we trademarked it Loose Kid Industries. To be honest, I was never thinking, this is going to be this huge brand and we're going to do this, but I always knew it was going to be something, And in the early days, I was probably more passionate about being a professional motocross athlete than building a brand. I was obsessed with trying to be a pro motocross athlete. So I finished school in 2003, ended up becoming a carpenter and doing my apprenticeship as a carpenter. And then obviously when 2007, it was around 2007, I was second year apprentice, and I thought, you know what, I want this to be my career. I really believe it can. So we actually transitioned the brand into LKI, which is the abbreviation to Loose Kid Industries. And then 2010, I finished my apprenticeship, still racing motocross on weekends. I was, and from that 2007 to 2010 period, it was about 3 years. I was working, at 4:30 in the morning and starting work at 6:30 on a job site, and in my lunch break making phone calls. I was training in the gym at night, and then working, and then racing on weekends and visiting retail stores to sell off a one-page catalog. Because back then there was really no social media. There was no, really, e-commerce wasn't really a thing then. Which taught me a lot about community building as well. And then obviously 2010 hit, and I was able to finish my apprenticeship, and we moved out of my mum's bedroom and some shipping containers we had in our backyard that was holding our product, and moved into our first office in Yatala. It was a small, it was about 450 square meters, half warehouse, half office. There was about 3 of us in there. So it was a lot bigger than what we needed even then. And for that period of time, we really just did everything for everyone. We made motocross gloves, motocross socks, we made life jackets, we made some sportswear, we made some street. We were predominantly a wholesale business. We sold to retailers such as like City Beach that had over 60 stores around Australia. And, we had a really strong wholesale business, but we were selling to a lot of different channels. We were selling to like motocross accounts, surf accounts, street accounts, to mountain bike accounts. And obviously, fast forward a little bit further to around 2015, I did a course called Landmark Forum. That was a 3-day personal development course. And that was kind of the start of the transition of me kind of wanting to learn. And I made a lot of mistakes, and obviously, still do today. But, how we got here today was from so many mistakes, and realizing that I didn't know everything, and just started to learn and listen to books and, started to ask why. And then that's when the sort of transition to LSKD started to evolve. We thought, you know what, we already had LSKD on product and the LKI logo. And as I started listening to these books and really starting to learn from the team, and we had around 12 team members in the office at the time, I started asking them, what do you think we should do? And we thought, you know what, let's change the brand to LSKD. And September 2018, after feedback from our community, our athletes and our team, we tried to change the entire brand and then rebuilt it from the ground up. and pretty much worked on one pair of leggings, which became our rep tie, our rep legging. And we created our own fabric, the buttery soft rep fabric. And we launched that in mid 2019, and we spent about 18 months on that. So it was this kind of like a real desperation to change, because the brand had kind of gone very stagnant. And I was like, I really love this, but I didn't know why I loved doing it. And that's where all these books and all these different personal development, thinking, I want to come to work for a stronger why. And I know the team probably did too. It's, yes, you got to grow and you got to make money and you got to keep funding growth, but there's a bigger picture there of why you're inspired to come to work. And then that's how we created our mission to inspire people to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. And then we really had to create that culture internally first. And then fast forward, that was 2018, 19. And then obviously now we're here today. So yeah, very lucky to be in this position. It was a lot of years of learning and yeah, very thankful.
So you had a trademark early on, but obviously that was for a different logo, right? And so that wasn't something that is still there up until today. Is that right?
Yeah. So we actually essentially had 3 different trademarks over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Kid Industries, and then it was LKI, and now LSKD.
Yeah, right. And so like you started off like in wholesale, then you moved to the direct to consumer market, right? So what caused that change? What was the reason for that change? You know what I mean? Like, what was the drive?
I think there was a couple of reasons. I think one was, when you're in wholesale, you are designing so far in advance. If you're running an indent model, anyone that knows the indent model in wholesale, you're designing sometimes 13 months in advance. So you're not getting community feedback. And then you have to go and show the ranges to a retail store, and then they will pick what they want to buy from you. And, doing that for 8 to 10 years taught me that, like, you're not actually learning from what the community wants. You're learning from what the retail store wants, which is not a bad thing, but where we wanted to go, we wanted to control our brand message and our mission and values. So that was one part that it kind of got frustrating in the end, because we really wanted to push forward as a brand. And then the next step is, being in, obviously there's a higher margin, et cetera, and that plays a big part, and you can really reinvest back into the business to keep growing and scaling and keep investing in the team and product development, R&D, the office we've just moved into, there's that side of it too, which is a big part of it. But the next thing, really was, there was a lot of different D2C brands around, and we were really inspired by that. And I really felt that there was no other Australian brand trying to really build something globally from Australia and create careers globally from Australia. And that really inspired me, because I watched these different brands around the world build these phenomenal brands online, whether it's accessories or even in sportswear, and thought, imagine if, LSKD could do that. And we create, have our sportswear with a street aesthetic and create careers globally. And we build something from here around the world. And that kind of inspired me, to be honest, and our team. And so there's a few different reasons why we went that far. And I mean, now we're going into retail. We're about to open our 7th store in July.
So you started off with wholesalers for 10 years.
Yeah.
So obviously that was going okay at the time, right? Because obviously, like, it's hard to continue for 10 years if it's not achieving some level of success. So what were some of the things that were performing at that stage? Because obviously, like it was somewhat functional, right? Somewhat.
Yeah.
Performing.
So I mean, we probably did wholesale for longer than that. It was probably 13 years we did wholesale for. And I think, the thing that I learned was it was a bunch of different channels that was working, whether we had a life jacket channel for water sports, we had, gloves in a certain channel, we had sportswear in a certain channel, and it was a lot of different channels, which took up a lot of time, and you couldn't focus on being great at one thing. And I think you really had to work it hard. And I was almost probably burning myself out, because I was trying to spread myself too thin. I also probably wasn't being a good enough leader and actually letting the team grow and understanding why they were developing product, why we were marketing, why we were doing things. And I look forward now, every decision we make, goes back, are we inspiring our community to chase the vibe? So trying to create those, trying to create a strong enough why that our team, they know what to do. If you've got your operating principles and all those things around it. But yeah, it was essentially, I think, just being in too many channels that led to, you were okay in each, but not being great at one.
So moving to the direct to consumer model, that allowed you to focus, right? And it sounds like the company launched with the leggings. Is that right? And so like the whole brand just launched off of the one specific product. Is that correct?
No, it's an interesting one because we were kind of stuck on growth. If I'm honest, the business was, probably sitting at around about $3 million for quite a few years. And so we had different products in the range. We had a lot of different, but we actually launched this one product that we spent a long time on getting a lot of feedback and decided it wasn't going to be for wholesale. It was going to be for our community online. And, we were selling lots of different products still, but really trying to refine it over time because we couldn't just quickly switch and do one thing. We still had, I think we had about 12 team members. So we still had to, you still had to pay payroll. You still had to keep the wheels had to keep turning over. So it was a real transition phase, if I'm honest. And it was quite a scary moment when it's not that long ago. But it was actually quite a scary moment. There was weeks I actually wasn't paying myself a couple of times and I had to make sure the team was paid because we were waiting to be paid from wholesale accounts. And, it was very stressful. My son was born in March 2018. And so, my wife and I were going to become parents. And, then fast forward 6 months later, we're changing the brand and flipping it on its head going, I really believe we've got something special here, but it's going to take time. And we talk about that the growth has been fast, but I think it was the pre-work we did to go. And I really thought that I didn't think it was going to grow this quick, if I'm honest. Like it was really about building a brand for long term. And for me, it was about how do we build something that's going to be around in 50 years time. LKI, I really wanted it to be a job. That's all I wanted. It was never about the money. I wanted to come to work and do it. So when I look back on it, it was like, how do we do something that's going to last? That was the big thing as a brand. And how do we inspire people that when they buy LSKD, they're inspired to get out and chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure, and work with inspiring athletes that inspire our, community. And I'm inspired by it. I'm getting ready for the Gold Coast Marathon coming up in a few weeks' time, and and I get inspired by a team around us that are doing that stuff. So there was a lot of different factors that played into when we did it. But yeah, it wasn't something we wanted to grow very quickly, if I'm honest. It was about, yes, you've got how to scale ads and invest in that, but we didn't think it was going to grow as quick as it did, if I'm honest.
And I guess like that's something I've consistently heard from successful e-commerce founders, right? Is that they focus on the community. That seems to be a consistent approach, right? And so before we get to that, because that's something that I want to spend a bit of time on. Can you talk through the 18 months, right? The leggings, you spent 18 months and that became a hero product. So what did you do like in the 18 months and what kind of conversations were happening and how did the product shift and how was the marketing attached? Yes. How did that product become the product?
It's a great question. I actually had been traveling offshore overseas since about 2011 as well. So, I had a great relationship with suppliers and was able to learn a lot about manufacturing and to be honest, we had a pair of leggings and they were okay. And I thought if we could develop the best in the world leggings for our community, what would we need to do? And I think we just, when I look back, we kept it really simple. We went back to the drawing board. We went out to the gyms. I was training. My wife trains. Like we were out there training, some of our team trained. So they were testing the product and we were just constantly tweaking it. Like it was just I can't remember, but it was like 10 different iterations, right? Like it was just so many. I don't like how it feels here. I don't like how it feels there. And we still have that same approach with product today. When we're developing our performance products, for the everyday athlete, we really spend time on, it's not about having a release date, it's getting it right for the community because you can't hide in, essentially if we say D2C, because you have anything can be posted on socials if you do it, if you don't do a good job or your reviews online. So it was very organic, it might sound very like structured. It was 18 months process, but it was, I think we planned, the goal was to launch them in February 2019. And we had a few issues and I ended up overseas actually in China for a couple of weeks working on it with a couple of our team. I remember in May, and then they launched in July. So they ended up close to 6 months later than what our goal was because we wanted to get it perfected. And then it was just about let's slowly build it. And obviously, and honestly, it sold out in the first like 4 weeks. And then it was about how do we, and then how do we keep the reorders up, because you want to keep consistency for the community, because that's the next stage. If it grows, and a lot of these, I'm supposed, looking at global brands and very big brands with, few hundred retail stores plus, it actually, you want to make sure you're really consistent, because if you lose that consistency for the community, that's the scary part. So there's one side to grow really quickly, but the next part is making sure you have a great relationship with your supply chain. You're working with them, you're controlling the fabric, the fit, understanding how that works. That's, there's a lot of work that goes on. I mean, we have a full production team, a design team, planning team, and I spend a lot of time with them because I'm constantly trying to learn myself. They know a lot more than me, but I'm constantly trying to learn as well, to stay on, as we keep growing. But yeah, it was very organic, if I'm honest. It was out with the community training.
And how did you sell it out in 4 weeks? Or what did you do to sell it out? Because obviously it's been now created, and now you're at the point where it's like, I'm happy with the product. But how did you really know that the community would be happy with the product? Like in terms of like any kind of experiments or testing or anything, like samples or tests or anything like that before you just launched, or not?
No, we didn't actually. I think it was our biggest order we'd ever placed back then. It was like, it was over 2,000 units. I think it was, for us, it was really big back then. And there's still large orders today for certain areas, but yeah, what, it was gut, right? Like, I think you got to take risks. And I think as any entrepreneur out there that, they're taking risks every single day, and you got to go by your gut. And got a lot of feedback, and just went, what, we truly believe in this. We truly do. And, we did our campaign shoots. We did Facebook ads, obviously, and digital marketing. And I actually ended up learning that myself, and how the media, how to media buy, because I was like, I got to learn this as well. So I ended up getting a coach to learn how to do it, and was in the ad account understanding, because I truly believed, once I started to learn it, I was like, this is just a new version of magazine ads. Back in 2010, it was magazines, and fast forward, the way to advertise is through social media. So it's not doing a double page ad. It's actually being in an ad account, serving your community through social media. It's not, there's all the metrics around it, but it's the new age magazine ads that you're lucky enough you can track. And then we worked with our athletes and gifting athletes and getting the product out there. But I think once they got the product, the word of mouth started to grow. And that also played a big part in it. And the reviews started to flow in. I mean, that one product has over 5,300 reviews now on our online store. So, which was really special, and a product we hold, very close to our heart, the Reptite. So yeah, it took, and it wasn't easy. It was a lot of do more with less. We didn't have big budgets, so it was whatever it took to get the brand out there. And we, it still sits in our values today. If there's a better way to do it, fine. So,
yeah, but I mean, you sold 2,000 units in 4 weeks. Was that all Facebook ads, or was it email marketing, just on an existing database, or how did you get the word out to sell it out that quick? Because that's pretty fast, like 2,000 units.
It's a good question. I think it was a number of things. I think there was athletes, which you could call, whether it was influencers, but athletes. We did some events. We gifted, our team was promoting it, community events. There was Facebook ads, there was email marketing. There was a big kind of, all at once. I mean, you can track the data and digital marketing, but I always believe it was truly a few different factors that helped. And I truly believe word of mouth helped. And I think if I look back then, there was so many amazing comments from our community coming onto these Facebook ads, that those ads, whether you call it at the top of funnel, was actually helping it as well. So, community be like, I got my leggings or tights. They were phenomenal. Thank you. And that almost helped an ad perform at the same time. So there was a few factors.
Your strategy was to focus everything on a single product, right? And lots of other companies, entrepreneurs or whatever, they start with like a lot of products, right? And if we look at kind of examples like Apple, they don't have that many products, right? But they are a very successful company, right? So it's just really interesting to think that you put so much effort into one piece of apparel, right? And that that effort, it was the launch pad, right? Because it set the stage for the brand, right? Now, how many products have you got in 2023? It's probably a lot more.
Yeah, and we still had quite a lot back then. There was other products within the range. Another part of our brand was Unisex. Back then, it was actually quite earlier than that. We started developing product and called it, it was a men's sweater, but our female community, like, I wear that. It's my boyfriend's hoodie, essentially, right? And we ended up terming it Unisex and thought, well, let's claim it Unisex. It's for everybody. And that was another thing that helped. You could tie it back to a pair of leggings or a pair of men's shorts. And what was interesting is we were predominantly a men's business back then. And we really wanted to grow our female community. So it actually slowly transitioned to probably more 70% female, 30% male, which was amazing. But we probably over about 1,000 different products now, and a big portion of leggings as well. But we still had products back then, but that was the pinnacle product we really wanted to get right. And we spent, we only have 2 fabrics in our range right now. It's our Rep fabric and our Zephyr fabric, and both have their own buttery soft elements. And then they make different products off that, which is like the Rep legging, the Fusion, the Flux, the base, and then you've got our Elixir, which is based off our Zephyr fabric. And then the Elixir with pockets is actually coming next month. So they were our key products. And then we make bras and different tops with that fabric for the community as well. So it was a big, bold move, but I truly believed if we could do it right for them, it would last long term. And then now the next goal is to keep consistent for them as well.
It sounds like the focus on the quality of that one specific item set the stage for the brand to scale, right? And I think that this is kind of the big learning I'm hearing right now, right? That there are already a bunch of, say, products out there already, but kind of the focus and the marketing, the influencers or the athletes are basically all just focused around the leggings to start with, right? And I think that's kind of interesting because it doesn't require too many things to get that initial success, right? But the first thing has to work so that like it can expand out across all the product range. Is that right? Is that a correct statement so far?
Yeah, and part of wanting to be best in the world at that product helped elevate everything else and quality, and really set a higher quality. We really want to make great quality, and that's the real goal. And I mean, when I look back on my career, I was setting up at motocross tracks and always at events. So we actually had this really large community that wore the brand already. And then when we were able to give them a product, and there was times I remember our community would come into our little office in the outlet saying, "Hey, do you have those leggings?" And I never really took any notice of it. I'm like, "Oh, no, they're sold out." I didn't really care. And I'm thinking, hang on, people keep asking for this product, but it could be so much better. So it took me a lot of learning to realize that we already had some phenomenal product, but I was probably always thinking of the next thing and the next thing, and not actually going back to basics and going, hang on, like, and also, what are you deeply passionate about, right? Like, I think that's also like, there's a difference between, I think, making a product because you just want to make money, or making a product that revolves around what you're deeply passionate about. And I'm deeply passionate about the mission, and which involves fitness. So it had those two elements together, and I could, I really wanted to come to work and have fun and be myself, as well as create that environment for the team, because, if it did ever get to where we're going to now, like it's not easy. So you're always on it. You've got to be constantly on your game as a team. So there was a few different elements, because once we actually already had this amazing community, and we sponsored a lot of different events, and then we offered this product and really focused, and they really resonated with the brand change. They wanted to wear it to train in the product. So, and then obviously having, Facebook ads and all different things to serve the community, it helped sell the product as well. So there was a few different elements, I would say. But yeah, I think that the takeout was always for me to slow down and to speed up. I was always go. But I'm like, if I slow down and stop trying to think about everything and just really try and be great at one thing, this could be a really amazing career for me and the team. And then you go hard.
And then 5 years later, it's a very successful company, and it's making like around $80 million a year, right? So that's much higher than the $3 million, which is pretty good still, right? But it's significantly scaled up right now. And so how much has the marketing changed since that launch? right? Because that launch was about the one product and all this effort, that was kind of the hero. Yeah. So how much like has it shifted just from like a single, what's it called? In terms of kind of the single hero product to now like a range of products?
Yeah, I mean, the marketing, there's been a few different things as we've been able to grow. We are a self-funded business, so we've been able to keep reinvesting back into not only our team, but into athletes, into events, and where we sit between sort of, I suppose, our brand pillars, whether it's functional fitness, CrossFit, running, and really invest in those areas for long term as well. So not just thinking, okay, paid media is everything. It's around brand building as well, and really sharing our values and our mission, and how do we expand that through different athletes, through different storytelling pieces, through different events, and really build on that, which is something you don't get an ROI for straight away. But it's about building brand for the future.
Okay, let's talk about this one. This is like the $1 million question, or the $80 million question, right? This is like, when did you transition from investing in performance to investing in the brand?
I mean, we've always invested in brand with athletes. I think that's something that I think athletes really help storytell the brand. But I also think, you couldn't travel much, or you couldn't really do proper events until probably how long, a year and a half ago? So it wasn't that long ago COVID was here, right? So I think once that stopped, that's when we really started to go, we can start doing that. And I think, once we opened our head office, and if you check out our Instagram account, LSKD.HQ, you'll get to see a bit more of an idea of what we do at our headquarters. But, we have a retail store at the front for our community, which led us to opening retail stores. And our first store last year was Chadstone in October. We have a rooftop with a gym. We had a huge pride ride on Saturday night. Last Saturday night, we had about close to 60 cycle bikes on the rooftop. It was epic, like a full light show. It was so fun. So, we're doing those kind of things all the time. So it really started to shift, I suppose, once you were allowed to do that, because we were used to doing that all the time in the early days and being at events and being a part of the community. So we've always been doing it, but as soon as travel kind of came back and you could start getting out there, that's kind of when we just started doing it again, because we were able to, because the restrictions were released to be able to do more events. So it's kind of that. But if it wasn't due to that, we would have been doing it, that entire time as well.
And so your brand building is really focused on athletes and events. Is that right?
I would say.
Or is there like additional areas as well on top of that?
Oh, I mean, there's so many different factors within marketing, isn't there? But yeah, I would say, there's events, there's athletes, there's, storytelling pieces with the athletes. But yeah, they're probably two of them. Yeah.
And then how do you justify the investment on the brand side of things, and how do you combine that with ROI, right? Because obviously it's unlimited how much a company actually could spend on brand. And so how do you kind of figure out the sweet spot?
Oh, I mean, I think if everyone knew it, they'd all be successful at it, wouldn't they? I mean,
you are pretty successful. That's why I'm trying to ask you, like, how you think about it. I
don't know if we're getting everything right. We do move fast and break.
But you're getting enough things right.
We do fail forwards a little bit because we're constantly learning as well. But I think you set a budget and you work to that budget and you do more with less, and you get out and get at it and go hard and try things that align back to what your brand stands for. It's not about being everywhere. It's not about doing everything. I think it's about going back to what your brand stands for. If you're, depending what your product is and what you're trying to achieve, you focus on those communities and get out into those areas. And what do you have to spend? You allocate a digital budget and you allocate another budget, and you try to stick at that. And really focus on it. If especially if you're self-funded, you have to be smart. So, the do more with less mentality is real. So how do you measure it? It's a hard one to measure, right? Because if you go to the event, you have these authentic conversations that can sometimes help going, wow, I never thought that would ever happen. And we're going to go back and be better tomorrow. So, and learn something new today that we can be better at tomorrow across even product for our community. So it's actually a hard one to measure, and I mean,
but how do you adapt it then?
People like to ask Nike that too, just find out.
But then how do you adapt it though, right? Because all right, cool. So now we have the budget and we're spending X amount of dollars on this. Is it good or not? Like how do you kind of assess, is that the right athlete? Is it the right event? Is it the right thing? Or is it like just a certain approach?
You've got to be not scared to make mistakes as well, right? Like, I think that's the thing. Like, you have to know that you might make a mistake, but what are you going to learn from that mistake? And we've made plenty of mistakes in the last 4 years of testing things and trying it and giving it a crack and failing forward. So I think you've just got to be prepared to do it. If you get too analytical in the data, you probably never do anything, right? Like, it depends. Are you going to be a company that media buys your entire life? Which I don't think is brand long term. I think you've got to have a balance personally, which takes time and takes a long time. And I think if you look at a lot of these different brands, especially there's brands, that these 100-year-old, 50, 100-year-old brands and what they've been doing, it takes time and really trying to stay in your lane as your community and how you storytell your why. And you can see it when brands get distracted. And I think that's something we have to work really hard on. So there is a fair amount of fail forwards in it. And I also think if you look at signing an athlete or you look at doing things, probably something I didn't mention before, so I'm glad you kept picking my brain on it, does it align to your values? I think that's the big part. Does it align back to your values and what you stand for? If you're having a conversation with whether it's an influencer, depending on the brand, or it's an athlete or what you're doing, is there values alignment? Because you almost want to realize that they're going to work in your team. They could work in the office within your team. Like, you've got to have that connection, the values alignment. How can you help each other? It's got to be a win-win. If it's a win-lose, you're probably not going to do it. You've got to be in it together and working on it. And I think partnerships are really important there. So I think a values alignment is another big part of it. And that goes down to whether you're doing an event as well, because there's the event promoter, there's all that goes into it, and what's their why behind their event, and who are going to that event, and what's the audience going, what's actually happening there. So there's a number of factors within it, but I do think probably if I think about one of the most important things would be there's a values alignment within what you do.
So set a budget, fail forward, and have the values alignment, essentially, right? And then just experiment a ton, essentially, on that side of things, and just kind of like hear the feedback, right, just from everyone who's involved in kind of the brand building side of things.
Yeah, and I think it depends on your role within the business, but you also have to go to them as well. Whether you're being a part of it, because you have to know, how it's. I was lucky enough to be a part of 2 big events on Saturday, one on the Gold Coast for Global Run Day and one in our rooftop, and I got to attend both, and I was a part of those events, and they were very special to be involved in, and it was super fun, and got to have some amazing conversations with different communities. So yeah, I think, and you just got to learn and listen to your team, as well. That's a big part of it.
So let's talk about community, because you talk a lot about community. The background says community.
What about value?
So that's actually just, so that's not even like a fake Zoom background. That's that's part of the meeting room, right? That's actually literally up on your wall.
Yep.
Cool. So who is in your community, and how do you think about your community, and how do you engage with your community?
I think our community is our customer. Like, I just don't personally not a fan of saying the word customer. I feel like making it more inclusive, engaging with them. It's through, it's even down to social media and how we chat to our community and try and be real and be ourselves, because, as you read behind us, our community is why we are here and who we work for, So, and knowing when we make mistakes, we have to own it is a big part of it. We have a Facebook community group with over 65,000 in it, which is amazing. And, we spend a lot of time in that community group and learning from them and asking for their feedback. And so there's a number of different factors that, we think about with the community, but, the community is essentially, and I think even internally as a team, we're a community internally as well. So we have to do the right thing, on both sides. Essentially where I'm doing this podcast, I could look out the window and there could be a customer or community member shopping, and they could probably see me on this podcast right now. So there's no barrier of entry either. And then behind us is the office, and they can actually see to the side where we all work. We really don't have a barrier. Our rave cave, which we call our boardroom, we call Ollie's Rave Cave. We sadly lost a teammate last year to leukemia, so we named it after Ollie, but it's literally in the retail store. So you'll be in a, I was there with the production team this morning, and there was community shopping, and which is great because there's no barrier. So, I mean, we think about it a few different ways, if I'm honest, but
Yeah, but what do you, so what are the things which you do every day, right? Like, so for example, there's a Facebook community, right? Are there people, starting conversations, or is it just customers or the people in the group? They're just having some conversations as you being part of it. Like, is there some content that's being shared or created? How do you do it at scale, essentially?
I mean, we have a teammate that is in that group every day, whether they're asking questions for feedback, they're showing early releases, there's conversations happening in there from different community members. We've even flown up community, from that group to our HQ for a tour. And gained feedback and done instances like that. There's different ways to engage. I mean, it's keeping it simple as well and not overcomplicating it, but it's, as little as asking questions on what they think about a colorway. And, we do things like that. So, and I think that, when you do those little things, they feel a part of it because we want them to feel a part of the journey. And I mean, there's probably so many more things we could be doing, right? Like, we're not perfect, but there's different things we're constantly doing all the time there.
And so, like, I read, or I listened in some other interview that you were on, that you go through and you read all the social media comments across all the ads, right? And that actually helped you change some of the product or some of the things. How important was that kind of whole approach, or that whole, because like, sometimes there's like a lot of scrolling, right? And there's a lot of content, there's a lot of things in there. How did you approach that? And so what was some of the learnings which you had from that process?
Oh, I mean, I still do that today. You learn so much. And if it's good or bad feedback too, right? Like, it's not always perfect. So yeah, I mean, there's been an instance that we had this sweater, and a community member literally said, "Can you make it this color?" So we mocked it up and said, if it gets 500 likes in an hour, we'll make the sweater. And then we named it after her, and then we sent her one for free and said thank you, and really shouted this community member. We called her, and like, we made it fun. Like, and we made a colorway based off that one thing in the community group. I mean, that was probably about 18 months ago, but that was an instance where we just, I think I was actually, I was away and I saw it, and we kind of came up with this as a bit of fun and said, if it gets 500 likes, we'll make it in an hour.
Wow.
And it did. And then, we named it. It was like a burnt orange, and we named it after a community member. So it was cool. Like, we've done stuff like that before too. But I mean, I look at it, across all different platforms and read and, and try to understand, because even negative comments help us to be better if there is a problem. And we need to respond to that and try to how we be better. And I mean, even our team do a phenomenal job, but they'll call the community. Our head of community experience, Jade, she's amazing in what she's done to really help foster that within the team. We have about a team of 15 in community experience. So, and they do work through weekends and shifts. So we're always trying to be on at a certain time to serve the community and whatever they need. So that's stuff that we constantly work hard on.
But that's a really good point, just to point out. That's the same word twice, but that's a really good point. There are 15 people who engage with the community. Is that right? Across your company? Yeah. 15. So just for the listeners, they talk about the importance of community, but as soon as you hire 15 people to manage it, that's when you know how important the community is, because that's a big payroll. Just to support the community.
We don't treat it lightly. We're very passionate about that, and then it's been amazing because we had team members move from community experience into other roles within the brand, which means they understand when they're making decisions, they understand it from a community member's perspective as well. So we do a lot of pipelining like that.
So this is just a quick kind of more kind of operational part, but what are the KPIs of the people in the community team? Because like, it's not really about sales, right? It's not really about traffic. It's not really about the traditional numbers that you would really kind of assess somebody's performance on. So what is it based on?
Well, it's a great question. I think, with the creative community, I mean, it's make sure, I mean, you've obviously got to.
How do you assess how good they are or not then, right? Of course, someone is hired or not.
I mean, I get the daily review, this daily star reviews come through. So you get to read a lot of them and what teammates are doing, which is phenomenal. But, that comes through on Slack. But I mean, I'm of the impression if a team member spends 3 hours on a phone to a community member, but they left and supporting them to be 1% better, or, like supporting them through their journey, that's great, right? Like, that's great. Like, I don't think you can't measure it. I mean, there's the tickets and how many emails we've got and how many phone calls and how many messages and your responses on socials. And when we're doing campaigns, making sure we're ready to go, so we're on if there's a certain campaign, even down to Black Friday and all that planning you do. But I also think it's about looking after the community. Like if they need to serve them and help them, whether it's live chat or whatever they need to do, you fix the problem, right? Like I think that's the kind of mindset we have. And I mean, you could chat to Jade. She would share a lot of, she's phenomenal in that area and what she does. And, it's a really hard KPI because you got the day-to-day responses, but how are you going to change almost, if we can inspire someone to go chase the vibe by changing, by supporting them or having a phone call or, getting to know them, right? Like they're real humans and they're chatting, right? So we kind of be ourselves, have fun and be yourself.
So I guess it then comes down to really just making sure that you hire people that share the same values as you. And I guess that's where you might have to spend kind of the majority of the time because they just have to care essentially about the community, right?
100%. I think recruitment with the team is really important. It's the whole, like, get the right people on the bus, and find teammates that align to the mission and values and really want to come on that journey. I think that's really important because then it flows on. Micromanagement doesn't, it becomes a different thing, right? Like it's about output. It's not about, that side of things. It's freedom and responsibility, almost thinking, but with essentially, if you want to call OKRs and goal targets, et cetera, in there. But yeah, I think hiring is probably one of the most important things to get the right teammates is very key.
And you're saying all these words that I want to go into, like OKRs. I mean, I've done all these things as well. And so, but look, I'll just keep it kind of higher level for now. But it's like, just for the listeners, just the things that he's just saying on the side is such sophisticated operational things that is required. But that's not what you're saying is important. That's just what you're saying is the operation. That is not what caused success, right? That is not the part that has led to the growth of LSKD, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, that's just things you do to set goals and targets, whether it's subjective key results that comes from a book. And a lot of these things come from books. When I talked back at the start, come from different books we're learning and listening, and then our team are listening to. We pay for our team's Audible account. If they want to listen to books, we pay for them, and we have certain books we all listen to and constantly help each other grow. And then we make decisions off that. But that is not, the growth didn't come from that. No, that actually comes so we can stay focused as a team and work together on goals that we might have, because we have very big goals as well. Like we have huge goals. Whether you want to call them big BHAG, but they all come from books, and they all come from, like, we're all going to work together, which always goes back to the mission and values. The values aren't something that you just write on a wall and leave it. You make decisions off that every day. When you're stuck, every teammate has 100 decisions they have to make every day. If they can make it based off that, it makes their life a lot easier, and they can do great things. So there might be, I don't want to use these big words because it's not, definitely hasn't been the reason why it's grown. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you've actually had quite a journey, and you mentioned how you went to the Landmark course, and you've paid for coaches and stuff. What were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned over the years, especially about kind of the leadership side of things? Because it sounds like you've come a long way in terms of the kind of leader that you are as well.
Yes. Yeah. I've made lots of mistakes, which has been a good thing and a bad thing. I think the thing, learning, like, you don't know what you don't know, and you've got to have a learning mindset. And, I've talked about it before on a previous podcast. Our head of design, Dill, and it's kind of funny because we joke about it now because it's, but he left for 18 months because I was, he came in late to work, and instead of me asking me, is he okay? It was like, why are you late? Like, what's going on? What the fuck? Like, and rousing on him, not actually seeing if he's okay, because he actually got stuck in traffic. Like, who cares, right? Like, mate, you're late. Don't worry about it. Like, and if you're late to a meeting, send a text. But he wasn't even late to a meeting, like I was almost thinking that people were not coming to work to want to do a good job, right? People don't do that. They want to come to work to do a great job. So you got to support them on that. And I think that I didn't realize that for a very long time. And you've got to be open to listening to them, because I probably was way too emotionally attached. And it's not that I'm not emotionally attached now, but it's being open to listen and learn. And it took me a long time, and having great people around me to teach me that too. My CFO, Matt, played a big part in that, because he came from a bunch of different businesses, and I was in I was very vulnerable, and I need to learn, because the brand wasn't growing, right? Like, when you look at the 2002 to 2018 journey, we got stuck on growth, and I was like, why isn't it growing? And I really wanted it to grow. Like, I didn't. It wasn't just like, I'm happy being there. You want to keep getting 1% better. And then I had to look at myself. It was me. Like, I was making all the mistakes. I wasn't listening. I wasn't learning. I wasn't going out. Was I actually listening and taking in the notes from a book? Probably not. Like, and actually learning from it, and then trying to apply those learnings that someone spent 7 years writing a book. Why not learn from it? So I don't know if I gave any answers there. I apologize, went off on a tangent, but I think that the probably being is, you don't know what you don't know, and you've got to be constantly open to learning, and especially as it gets bigger and busier and a lot more happening.
Yeah, I think that was a good answer. And I also think that the entrepreneur's path is an interesting one. There's so many failed entrepreneurs, or kind of entrepreneurs that haven't succeeded yet. But it sounds like you were kind of successfully stuck quite a while, and you stuck with it. You know what I mean? And so, what was the thing that caused you to stick with it? Is it because of the motocross, or was it, was it because that was it? Like I can't even imagine anything else in my life. Like, this has to be it.
I asked
That's a long time sometimes to stick with it, right? You're like, because there's been so many times where you're like, oh man, why is it not working?
I think I don't know. I wasn't going to let it fail me. It's kind of like there's I don't think you don't just get lucky, right? I think, and we've still got a long way to go. We're just getting started, right? But I think there's a quote from a book: "Luck favors the bold," right? And I truly believe in that. Like, you've got to stick it out, and you've got to keep going. You might tweak, and you might turn, and you might, what we did was I always like to laugh and say third time lucky, but no, it was like we kept tweaking and turning and changing and learning. And I was actually going through this real journey of actually learning product development, brand building, team building, all these things, and failing until I finally figured out that what was I actually passionate about, not what did we need to do to make money. And I think, luck favors the persistent, right? And you get return on luck moments, and that happens, and it's a real thing, and you've got to keep going. And I think people, and when I look back then, I was in my early 20s. I was essentially a teenager. I was 19, 20, really, when I got started properly. So I was so young, and I was living in my wife's parents' garage for $50 a week. It was never about that. It was about building something. It had nothing to do with, there was no real thing as entrepreneur for me. That wasn't a thing. I genuinely loved doing it and didn't know why. So yeah, I think luck plays a big part. You've got to stay persistent and constantly keep trying and learning and failing forwards. And I think that you eventually get better. And just because of where we're at now doesn't mean we're not making mistakes either. Constantly making mistakes, but we learn from them, we move forward, and get better.
Yeah, mistakes are good. And I think, this is something I always speak about. Like, school made us afraid of making mistakes, right? Because of the tests. It's like, oh my God, I made a mistake. But life, and especially entrepreneurship, the more mistakes, the faster the success, and I think that's like a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, and I started reading, different books I was reading about different founders, whether it was Phil Knight from Nike or Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon. Some of these people were closer to 40, by the time they, 42 when they started to build a new brand. And I was like, wow, I'm 30. I got a long way to go. Like, young, like, and I was genuinely going through those moments going, it hasn't worked, because you'd see these young founders and they do a phenomenal job. And I was like, whoa, wow, like maybe I don't know what I'm doing here. I never went to university. I was mediocre at school. I wasn't very good. I loved going to school and loved sports, but wasn't the brightest kid, but I loved being a part of it. So, I think when you look back at those things and you read about these different founders and get inspired by them, you're like, hang on a minute, some of them were in their 40s. They weren't you're like, hang on, this journey's early. Like I'm, just turned 36. I still got a long way to go. Like, I'm only just getting started in my career. So yeah, I think those things, and I think that's the inspiring thing about reading founders' stories and the history of brands and the history of these stories. You realize that they made so many mistakes. Nike's a perfect example, right? It nearly failed so many times, and it was 10 years another business before it even turned into Nike, I think it was. So, they're inspiring stories. And I think you can look at that, and as a founder, you kind of relate to those things and go, that's cool. Like, it's okay to take time. I think that's something that I learn a lot about, and not worry about everything else around me and just focus on what we do.
A couple more questions, and then, because I'm conscious of time, because this has been a great chat. This is one of the longer ones because it's such a good conversation. I was going to say, is there anything which you would do differently if you started again?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think because I actually talk about this quite a lot with the team, and if we had have really grown in 2011, 12, when the business started to grow, we went full time, and I was in my early 20s. I actually don't think I could have handled it. I don't think I had enough of the right people around me. I don't think I had enough of the skills back then, and I don't think I would have been humble enough to handle it. So I almost think that I was very lucky to go through. Everyone wants a business to go quick and they want it to them, but I always look back and go, it was a great learning experience. I'm lucky. So I don't think I would change anything. If I'm honest, I think it was a journey, and it was meant to be. And I'm on a journey with our brand, and very passionate about, why we do it and how we can sustain it long term. So, maybe, no,
No, that's good.
Maybe try to run a quicker marathon earlier, but that's all right.
Just personal sport achievements. Yeah, I got it. And then ask any advice to the younger entrepreneurs out there that are starting these e-commerce sites, and they're doing all kind of the drop shipping stuff, right? There's so many younger people trying to just make money. And I think that you're all about the mission, the vision, the community. Yeah. What is the advice to the younger entrepreneurs out there? Because it sounds like you started at the same age that they will be starting now, right? And so what would you say to them?
It's a great question. It's okay not to know everything, because you're just going to keep learning, and it's okay to fail. But I think make sure there's a strong why behind why you're doing it, because that becomes a byproduct of the money. If there's a strong enough why, you can empower people around you to become a part of the journey, which makes it a lot more fun, and really help people grow their careers, which I'm very passionate about. But I think making sure you've almost got a strong why behind what you do. It can be just making money, but where does that lead to? Because when I look back, you look at some of these brands and you look at these founder stories, and they would go back and do it all over again, right? Like, you listen to these books and you go, wow, they would go back, and Nike would go, but Phil Knight's probably missing all those days. He'd go back and do it all over again, right? And, he's going to probably donate all the money he has. So, really enjoy those moments, because I think, even we look at it and go, man, remember it was 3 years ago? That was so fun. Like, even now we take photos and we really try, and, we're big on storytelling, and we love the history of where we've come from, and we've still got the original catalogs. And previous to that, I didn't want to know about it. I was very embarrassed of the early days of the brand, where now I'm like, no, like, that's how we got here. Like, we've still got the first ever t-shirt in our stairwell on the way up to the fitness club. So I think it's make sure you enjoy that journey too, which, I mean, it's one of our values, because it when it does grow, it gets busier, and you're very focused on what you need to do every day. It becomes a different thing again, and really, how do you keep leveling up as a business? But I think having a strong why is probably the most important thing.
I think that's a fantastic point. And I think that's from the book from Simon Sinek, right? The Power of Why, or something like that, or Find Your Why, or something. Why. You start with why. That's the one. I mean, I did that one about 12 years ago as well, with the whole team.
I love that
years ago. Yeah, such a good book. But the part which is awesome about the thing which you just said is that the journey is going to be appreciated, maybe not in the moment, because sometimes in the moment it's really difficult. But then afterwards, you think back and you really actually liked that part of it, right? And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that, especially just when you're in the abyss of pain and stuckness and I don't know what's going on. But then afterwards, you're like, well, actually, that was the point that all this happened, right? So I do think that that's a really good point.
Yeah, and every part of the journey, no matter what it is, you know, and I've had plenty of those moments, and you know, you're still going to have those moments, you know, when things do go wrong. You know, life isn't perfect, but you look back on it, and you go, wow, that was not as bad as I thought, or you know, I got through that because I really just took the time to understand how we can improve or be better, or the mistakes we made, or you know, anything, you know, there's so many factors to what you do every single day whether it's an entrepreneur, or even if you're leading a department or leading big teams, or you're starting out your career working in a role, right? Like it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a similar thing. So, yeah.
Jason, awesome conversation. Just for the listeners, their products are great. So if you exercise, you should definitely purchase some of their products. LSKD.com.
It's LSKD.co, and it's another story, but we couldn't afford .com. But we have it now. So that was a few years ago. So we could only get .co because, you know, same thing, you do more with less, and we couldn't get .com. We finally have it now. That's a good thing. So, but yeah, LSKD.co.
Yeah, of course. The links in the. Appreciate it. Yeah, of course. So all the links are going to be there. Basically in the show notes. We'll link to the Instagram, subscribe to Instagram and check out the community, subscribe to their Facebook, just so you can see what they're doing. Because if you really want to get what they're doing, be part of the community. I mean, obviously this is a brand that's grown significantly and very quickly, and it's all about the power of the community. So be part of it and experience it and see for yourself kind of how they do it, because this is only like a short conversation for a very complex and in-depth approach. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been a great conversation, Jason.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast. And if you need help driving growth for your company, please get in touch with us at webprofits.io.